So I wanted to come on today and talk a little bit about my personal philosophy on health. And this isn't, I'm not a physician, I'm not a licensed or credentialed person in any way. I just am a passionate learner. And at the end of the day, I'm a farmer's daughter from Wyoming. I'm not really I'm not a city person. I'm culturally blue collar. And so I just have a lot of different views on things, and I conduct my journey with health sort of differently than like the mainstream, or, the way that most people do things. And I think that's great. I think that's okay. I think there are so many ways to skin a cat. No offense, Tuco. There are lots of ways to live your life. I think that as long as you're choosing the way that you live your life with intention and you know why you do things, I think that's really the most important thing. So this is just me sharing my philosophy and my values. I have like 5 main sort of things that apply to my philosophy, and I'll go through like all 5 of those things. And they're pretty broad, but I think that in general, it's a good way to kind of learn about me as a person and sort of, what my values are when it comes to health. I think number 1 for me is I believe that food should nourish us. The foods that are nourishing for human beings, in my opinion, based on my own, personal passionate research, are animal proteins, particularly red meat. That's what I was raised on a lot of red meat. I was raised on a lot of wild game. My family has always been hunters. I was raised on a lot of like bison and elk, and we're very fortunate because I do live in the rural American West where we have, we have this kind of accessibility to not only wild game for hunting, but we're surrounded by cows. We have a lot of beef in this area, and it's more affordable here than it is in a lot of other parts of this country. So take that with a grain of salt, depending on where you live. Where you live, beef might be really, really expensive, and I don't want you to take what I'm saying as like, an attack, because it's not your fault that you might live in an area where beef is more expensive. But I think animal proteins are absolutely the most nutrient dense and the most bioavailable foods that we could be eating. Again, this is just my opinion, based on how, we live as a family. Animal fats, I think, are incredibly nourishing and incredibly healthy, despite a lot of the mainstream claims, against cholesterol. I know that cholesterol is, based on what I've read, is extremely important for building babies' brains, especially. So especially in pregnancy, they're essentially, you can't build hormones without healthy fats. And I do not believe that seed oils or polyunsaturated fats are healthy for us. I think they're pushed onto us because there's an industry that profits off of them being pushed onto us. Things like soybean oil, corn oil, canola oil, rapeseed oil, all these oils, that sunflower oil, safflower oil, that are like squeezed out of seeds, and we consume them in massive quantities. If you start to read food labels, you'll see that those fats are in everything, and I don't think those are good fats for us. I think that good fats for us are the fats that have withstood the test of time, which is, if you follow human history and human evolution, you see that, the basis of our diet as hunter-gatherers was, meat and fat at a baseline for a very long time. And so I stand by that for my family. I only cook in, things like beef tallow and ghee. I use butter religiously. I love butter. So we use a lot of animal fats. I also use quite a bit of like tropical fats. Tropical fats they're really good fats as far as, if you need an alternative to animal fats. I cook a lot with coconut oil. I love coconut oil. I'm like kind of an olive oil snob. Like I'll really invest in high quality olive oil, and I use that for, all my salads and stuff. And something that's like less well known and less common, we used to consume these all the time, but we don't really do that anymore. And they're extremely helpful for fertility. They're extremely helpful for having healthy pregnancies and growing healthy babies. But organ meats, it's kind of becoming more of a trend now, which I think is a good thing. But you can literally buy organ meats that are desiccated or freeze dried and encapsulated from various companies. Heart and Soil is a really good company. I love their products. I I take their desiccated organ supplements, and I'm not sponsored by them or anything. They're just a good company, and I really love, the content that the founder puts out, Paul Saladino. I think his book Carnivore, I think it's Carnivore Code, was a fantastic read for anybody who's just fascinated about just the raw science behind why animals are good for us. And then I add to that list fermented foods. These are naturally like probiotic foods. So a really good sauerkraut. Good sauerkraut will have like organic cabbage, water, and salt as the ingredients, and that's it. Kimchi is a good fermented food. Again, if you can find a high quality kimchi that's like, that's got really good ingredients in it. Those are natural probiotics. Those are so much more effective than just taking a probiotic. I'm a big fan of probiotics, assuming that they work, and most of the probiotics on the market don't really work. So it's good if you can just get that in food form. Fermented foods are absolutely outstanding for the gut microbiome, for the health of the intestines, everything flora and biological, like bacterial diversity for the body. That's why fermented foods are awesome. I'm a huge fan of raw dairy. You don't need to lecture me in the comments. I'm fully aware of, how dangerous raw dairy is, and I personally don't buy it. I love raw dairy for many reasons, not only for the fact that it's a complete food all on its own. It's an outstanding food for that first trimester nausea for me. That was something that personally for me, worked really well when I couldn't really eat a lot of things. I wasn't super sick, but I was just very food averse, and the raw milk that I get from my very trusted source, my sweet lady that lives up the road, and she has cows that she dotes over, that she loves. She procures the milk in a very clean, sanitary way. I trust her. I've been out there with her, with the cows, helping her milk. I know exactly how she feeds and how she cares for her animals, and so I would not take raw milk from just anybody. But for me personally, I just happen to have this resource available to me and my family, and I utilize it because it hasn't been tampered with, it hasn't been messed with. It's not such a filthy product that it has to be pasteurized, and I like that everything about it is intact. It's got fat-soluble vitamins, every vitamin and nutrient that's necessary for healthy fertility, that's necessary for healthy lactation and breastfeeding, that's necessary for growing a healthy baby, exists in raw milk, whether it be cow, goat, sheep. There are different types, and so personally for me, raw dairy is a wonderful natural supplement to my diet and to my family, and I can cook a lot of amazing things with it. I can transform it. I can make cheese. I can do all sorts of amazing things with raw dairy. So that's why I personally prefer it. Eggs are a wonderful part of the diet if you can handle it. If some people can't have chicken eggs, so I always recommend like quail or duck eggs as alternatives. But I have my own chickens. Eggs are such a huge part of our diet. We eat half a dozen eggs a day. Just between my husband and I. So it's really important that we have like a constant stream of eggs, and it's nice to have. We're really fortunate that we get a little bit of property that we can raise chickens on, and so we always have fresh eggs, and that's something that I'll never give up. I'll never be able to give it up. I'll never be able to not raise chickens and have eggs because they're such an important part of our diet. The choline in eggs are so wonderful and so essential for a healthy pregnancy and for growing healthy babies. And it's a really, really good way to start your day for breakfast. If you start your day with eggs, they're a great source of protein and nutrients, and they stabilize blood sugar, and they don't create any crazy insulin spikes. They're just a wonderful food. So we eat a lot of eggs. All the food that I get is as local as possible. I can't get all of it as local as possible, but I do personally, I try to stay as organic. The organic industry is not, it's not perfect. And there are some fruits and vegetables that they're just by nature, based on how they're grown. Even in the organic side of things, they're very heavily contaminated with chemical residues. A lot of my philosophy is I guess I'm pretty crunchy, but I'm I would call myself a crunchy redneck, I guess, because I'm a country person. We're not wealthy. We're just country people. We're your typical rural blue collar country people, and so we're not made of money, but we do the best with what we've got. And in our house, we don't have much money, but what we do allocate our money towards is food first, nourishing food first. Whatever's left, I guess we'll pay the bills. So that's kind of like, not everybody can operate that way, but we're very, very committed to nourishing foods because we want to stay out of the hospital. We want to stay out of the healthcare system. And I'm going to talk more about that later on.